Mafia. One knife ended the bloodline. From 1931 to 2005, La Cosa Nostra made New York their home. For decades, they controlled every aspect of organized crime in the city, engaging in activities ranging from illegal gambling to drug trafficking. But the most lucrative venture for this mafia family was none other than extortion. They formed an alliance with construction companies, unions, and even politicians, shaking down business owners for hefty sums of money. This is where he got the nickname the Dapper Don. He continued to collect millions in extortion money while climbing higher and higher. By 1986, he was a capo in the Lucchese crime family. But the same year, he crossed a line. In 1990, he was promoted to underboss of the Lucchese crime family. But his lifestyle soon attracted unwanted attention. People noticed his expensive tastes and flashy ways. For example, he loved to fly private. He chartered planes to take himself and his cronies to Florida and the Caribbean. While these trips were for pleasure, some people saw them as opportunities for money laundering. And Gotti certainly looked guilty. He often arrived carrying suitcases full of cash. After appealing unsuccessfully, Gotti was transferred to the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. Gotti had left behind a fortune of at least $50 million. His family and close associates stood to inherit it. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on future videos. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. However, most of it went to the government. In the end, Gotti's empire was dismantled, and his bloodline was wiped out. Here he was held in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. But Gotti still had plenty of swagger. He intimidated other inmates and claimed he could still make people disappear. But that was just talk. In reality, Gotti was nothing more than a prisoner. Eventually, suspicion turned to certainty, and the government began investigating him for money laundering and racketeering. He had murdered a member of the Gambino crime family. On December 15, 1990, 6 members of the Gambino family attacked him outside a Manhattan restaurant. Gotti survived, but he lost face. Everyone, including law enforcement, knew he'd been betrayed. So it wasn't long before the government found its way into Gotti's inner circle. Agents had no trouble turning his associates into informants. They recorded conversations with Gotti and gathered enough evidence to charge him with racketeering. Technically, this meant he was supposed to become a fugitive, but Gotti was too powerful to ignore. On April 2, 1992, he was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. But Gotti continued to elude the authorities in the prison system. He bribed guards to bring him food and drink from outside. He received massages and manicures. In fact, he lived so well, he inspired a federal inquiry. Guards and administrators were fired after the investigation. Instead, the bosses gave him a slap on the wrist. On June 11, 1998, he was indicted for murder. The charges stemmed from the death of a Gambino crime family, capo. Gotti had been accused of ordering a hit, but he'd managed to avoid prosecution for 6 years. This time, however, there was no escaping justice. There was enough evidence to convict him. They fined him $100,000 and told him to leave New York for a while. So he spent a year in Miami, living a life of luxury. He lavished gifts on his family and friends, buying them expensive cars and clothing. He also established several legitimate businesses, including a restaurant and a strip club. He dressed impeccably when collecting debts, sometimes wearing bespoke suits tailored in Italy. Soon, his racketeering expanded beyond loans and bets. He stole millions by extorting business owners in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. His methods were simple. If a business owner refused to pay, Gotti and his crew would throw garbage into their store at night or damage their property. In more extreme cases, they beat up business owners or even killed them. In one case, Gotti ordered to rival mobsters buried alive in concrete. However, with such wealth came a slew of problems. The top earners became prime targets for both the police and rival crime families. So, who killed Gotti and why? Once back, he resumed his old habits, all while evading the FBI. The Bureau wanted him badly. They suspected him of involvement in hundreds of murders, but Gotti was always a step ahead. Every time the FBI closed in on him, he'd vanish. He either flew to an undisclosed location or employed decoys to confuse agents. And there was one last thing that frustrated law enforcement. Gotti made sure to keep his distance from informants and witnesses. This ensured that whenever he was arrested, The charges against him were weak and easy to defend. Before answering this question, we must first look at how Gotti amassed his fortune. Gotti was born in the Bronx borough of New York City on March 26. The old gang was now run by other people. So in 1958, he did the unthinkable. He joined the Mafia. Specifically, he joined the Lucchese crime family under the direct tutelage of boss Tommy Lucchese. Gotti was accepted into the family, despite being an independent man because of his reputation as a violent criminal. Gotti wasted no time proving himself worthy of the honor. In 1959, he participated in a violent clash between rival gangs in Brooklyn. It took place in the Gravesend neighborhood and involved members of the Colombo and Lucchese families. The fighting broke out during a meeting at a local bar. Several men were injured, including Colombo family capo regime soldier Anthony Rinaldi. The violence prompted police to intervene, but they did little to stop it. By the time it ended, one man was dead. Several others were wounded, and a local bar was destroyed. As far as Gotti was concerned, he'd done enough to prove himself. 1940. His father was a short-time boxer who later became a car salesman and bookmaker. Meanwhile, his mother worked as a seamstress. When Gotti was just a boy, the family relocated to Howard Beach, Queens. And by the time he'd turned 14, he'd already dropped out of school and joined a local gang. At 15, he committed his first robbery with the gang. They targeted a grocery store owned by an acquaintance of Gotti's father. While their plan was to steal cigarettes and liquor, the owner caught them and caned the teenagers with a baseball bat. But Gotti would not be deterred. He went on to commit several robberies over the next few years. In 1954, he was arrested after a botched jewelry store heist left him injured. He served 4 years of a 10-year prison sentence before being paroled. While in prison, he also married his sweetheart, Victoria DiNanno. Together, they had 2 children. After his release, Gotti returned to his old neighborhood, but he soon realized that things had changed. In the early 1960s, he was given permission to operate a loan sharking and bookmaking ring. As Gotti racked up wins, he rose through the ranks. By 1970, he was officially inducted into the Mafia. But Gotti eventually grew tired of Miami and returned to New York. Meanwhile, Gotti continued to grow in power. Gotti's bravado had drawn the attention of another Mafia family. Gotti's trial lasted only 3 weeks. While Gotti had evaded justice in prison, he couldn't escape it forever. So on December 10, 1998, Gotti was found guilty of murder and conspiracy. The judge overseeing the case sentenced him to life in prison without parole. He died on June 10, 2002, of cancer at the age of 61. Despite his efforts to hide his wealth, what do you think about this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.